Over 400 people are dead, wiped out in a single airstrike by the Pakistani military on a hospital in Kabul. India warned the world for decades about the terror infrastructure next door, and now it is consuming its own creators. This is not just a tragic mistake, it is the beginning of a full-scale border war that threatens to destabilize the entire region. Let us look at the reality. In the ruthless world of geopolitics, morality is a fiction invented by the weak. What we are witnessing today is the ultimate collapse of a failed strategic doctrine. For decades, the military establishment in Rawalpindi nurtured, funded and protected the Taliban. They called them strategic assets, a way to ensure influence in Afghanistan and to counter Indian presence. They celebrated when the Taliban took Kabul in 2021. But power is a highly unpredictable and dangerous game, and the proxy has now become the primary threat. The Afghan Taliban is providing safe haven to the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, the TTP, a militant group structurally identical to them but dedicated to overthrowing the state of Pakistan. Facing severe economic collapse, an IMF bailout crisis, soaring inflation and daily humiliating attacks on its own security forces, Islamabad panicked. The generals needed to project strength to their domestic audience. They ordered an airstrike deep inside sovereign Afghan territory, aiming for what they claimed were militant commanders. But instead, they leveled a civilian hospital. 400 dead, 250 injured. This is not a mere tactical strike or a border skirmish. It is an act of war, and the Taliban government, which defeated a global superpower, has already vowed severe retaliation. If you look at the map on your screen right now, you will understand why this conflict was entirely inevitable. Notice the long, jagged line separating Pakistan and Afghanistan. That is the Durand Line, a colonial artifact drawn in 1893 by a British civil servant who had absolutely no understanding of the local tribal dynamics. It cuts right through the heart of the Pashtun runeland, dividing families, tribes, and historical loyalties. Look closely at the terrain, the towering peaks of the Hindu Kush and the porous, ungovernable valleys. This geography makes traditional military border control statistically impossible. Afghanistan has never recognized this border, and neither does the Taliban. Pakistan tried to fence this line, spending billions of dollars they did not have, but the Taliban simply tears the fences down with bulldozers. Now look at the distance between the border and Kabul. Striking the Afghan capital means Pakistani fighter jets had to violate sovereign airspace deeply. This geography dictates that Pakistan cannot win a protracted ground war here. The terrain heavily favors insurgent guerrilla tactics. Rawalpindi is stepping blindly into a geographical trap of its own making. Now, let us do a reality check on the global hypocrisy surrounding this massacre. Publicly, the international community is rushing to microphones to condemn the violence. The United Nations will express deep concern over the loss of 400 lives in a medical facility. Western capitals will urge restraint and dialogue. But look beneath the surface. Look at the raw data and the history. For 20 years, Western powers poured billions of dollars in military aid to Pakistan to fight the global war on terror, knowing full well that Islamabad was playing a double game by sheltering the very people the West was hunting. The fighter jets used to drop bombs on this Afghan hospital were likely supplied, maintained, or funded by the same nations now preaching peace and human rights. Furthermore, the global powers are quietly relieved. As long as radical factions are busy destroying each other in the harsh mountains of South Asia, they are not plotting attacks in Western capitals. Even Beijing, Pakistan's so-called iron brother, will remain silent. China wants Afghan lithium and copper, but they will not risk their investments to save Pakistan from a mess of its own creation. This is the dark truth of realpolitik. The world will watch Kabul and Peshawar burn and do absolutely nothing to stop it. We must now shift our focus to New Delhi. For India, this is a moment of grim vindication. For over 30 years, Indian diplomats have stood at global forums warning the world that you cannot keep snakes in your backyard and expect them only to bite your neighbors. India's warnings consistently fell on deaf ears, dismissed as regional paranoia. Today, that warning has come true with devastating clarity. Pakistan's obsessive strategy of bleeding India through 1,000 cuts has resulted in a self-inflicted mortal wound. Islamabad is now trapped in a two-front nightmare of its own design. To the east, a heavily fortified, economically massive and militarily superior India that no longer tolerates cross-border terrorism. To the west, a battle-hardened, radicalized Afghanistan seeking blood revenge. So, what does this mean for India's national security, its trade, and its broader geopolitical standing? In the immediate term, India must prepare for the inevitable spillover. A massive destabilization of the Afghanistan-Pakistan region means a potential surge in refugees, the unchecked flow of illicit weapons, and regional economic volatility. India must seal its western borders completely and place its intelligence and security apparatus on the highest possible alert. But the larger strategic lesson here is the absolute, non-negotiable necessity of strategic autonomy. India cannot rely on the United States, Russia, or the United Nations to secure its neighborhood. When the region catches fire, global powers will only protect their core interests. This is why the policy of Atmanirbharta, or self-reliance, is not just a catchy economic slogan. It is the fundamental core of India's survival strategy. To isolate ourselves from the chaos of collapsing neighbors, India must aggressively accelerate the indigenous production of defense systems. We need our own combat drones, our own indigenous missile defense shields, our own surveillance satellites. Relying on imported weapons create fatal supply chain vulnerabilities during a crisis. As Pakistan bankrupts itself fighting the monsters it incubated, India must coldly and logically focus on its national interest. National interest demands that India remains strictly neutral in this violent clash. Do not intervene. Let Rawalpindi and Kabul exhaust their military resources, their finances, and their political capital. A weakened, fractured Pakistan, entirely distracted by a burning western border, significantly reduces its capacity to fund and manage terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir. India's victory here lies not in military intervention, but in strategic patience, isolation, and relentless economic growth. We must continue our march towards a $5 trillion economy while the neighborhood consumes itself. Before we close this analysis, a quick question for you to test your geopolitical knowledge. The Durand Line, which is at the center of this massive border dispute, was originally drawn to separate British India from which entity? Is it A, the Emirate of Afghanistan, B, the Russian Empire, C, the Persian Empire, or D, the Sikh Empire? Let me know your answer in the comments below. The ashes of the Kabul hospital are a brutal, undeniable reminder of how quickly state-sponsored proxies turn into existential threats. In geopolitics, there are no permanent friends, only permanent interests. Thank you for listening.